Welcome to Paranormal M, your gateway to the world of the mysterious and unexplainable. Subscribe and turn on notifications to keep up with our latest eerie tales. We hope you enjoy the journey. Dead relatives. So this is my dad's story, and I know for a fact that he wasn't lying about this. Now, I've heard 2 encounters about paranormal activity, but the one that he told me a few days ago still haunts me every second. So around 20 or 30 years ago, my dad, grandma, grandpa, and his great relatives all lived together. However, my great-grandma was driving down from Noosa. She was going to see her sister before she passed. She passed unexpectedly of a heart attack while down there. The day that this paranormal encounter happened, my dad, grandma, and grandpa went to Sunshine Plaza. If you're in old Australia, you might know where it is. So when they returned home, my dad and grandpa see my great-grandma, who had passed on the couch reading a newspaper. But the thing is she wasn't meant to be home for another few days. But they didn't know that, so brought it up with my grandma, to which she broke the news that she had died earlier that morning. The second story. This happened a few months ago, but it was about 12 or 1 a.m. My dad works really late hours at his office at home. However, he feels something pulling his shirt. Thought that it was me or my brother, but it turned around and only saw nothing. My dad told my mom, and he told me what happened. He looked so shaken up from it. Ghost kid or something else? It's been a while since this has happened. My best friend and I were living together in an apartment for about 2 years now. Never had any issues. Now this starts during the COVID lockdown. We didn't really have a lot to do, so we were just sitting in our living area and watching some TV and having tea. We suddenly saw the coffee table move a little. We ignored it. Things kept happening. Glasses literally flew out of cabinets, stuff kept falling off places, and I guess you could just say that we didn't take it seriously, so we joked about it. Oh yeah, there's a ghost in our apartment, it's harmless. That started a series of violent front doorknob turnings from the outside and banging at her door. It wasn't possible for a human being, the building was very safe. We confirmed it with security. This one day I had a dream where I was waking up from my bed. I was seeing a little boy. He was dressed up like it was like the early 2000s. I remember asking him who he was and how he'd get in here. He tells me his name, and I vividly remember it because of what will follow. And then he says, "What do you mean get in here? I live here." He then runs into the bathroom and vanishes. I woke up from the dream because of a phone call, and surprisingly it was a call from a cop who was asking me if he's speaking to XYZ. The same name as the little boy from my dream. Freaked me out a lot and told my BFF about it, and she was creeped out too. But after that, we had a lot of things happen to us. I eventually moved out, but my BFF and her boyfriend lived there, and well, she complains about hearing steps outside her room all night. I had a little sleepover with her recently. Completely felt somebody pull my leg. Someone randomly also told me my aura is dark. If there's something dark attached to me. The second time I heard the lady's voice. This is the second time I've heard the same lady's voice talk to me. Except this time I wasn't asleep. I was wide awake doing actual chores around the house. We were in our first house in California. I was vacuuming the floor because it was just a normal Sunday chore maintenance day. My wife and the kids, they were watching TV. That was because they were working on the movie and I was just finishing up the section before I went and joined them. As I was vacuuming the floor, I heard a female ask me what I'm doing. I responded, "I'm vacuuming. What do you think I'm doing?" And as soon as I said that, my wife was wondering who I was talking to. I told her, well, you asked what I was doing. She said I never said anything. I proceeded to ask her, who did the kids say something to, and she said no. Well, at that point, I knew that the lady spoke to me once again, except this time it was a lot more clear that I wasn't asleep. Been trying to find ways to reconnect with her again, but still, I've yet to hear her voice for a third time. Dream of the other side. Now, I don't know if this is considered a ghost story or not, but a while back I had a crazy dream of the afterlife from both heaven and hell's point of view. From my dream, I remembered I was standing in a really dark environment. I couldn't see anything around me. It was so black. All I could see in front of me was a soft reddish glow. But in this dream, it was neither hot nor cold, and the environment was actually quite comfortable. I remember certain objects around me. It was hard to tell what they were, but I looked up toward the reddish glow in my dream. I remember seeing these 4 elemental-style creatures changing shapes, but it looks like they were made of a fog, a dark fog, but they had white eyes and horns. They kind of reminded me of the newest creature from the newest Ghostbusters movie, but I had this dream long before that. And in this dream, as I looked at the creature, it's like looking the same. They were talking to me, trying to tell me something, but I couldn't make out with what they were saying because it was in a language that, wasn't of this world. After they finished speaking to me, I felt myself get sucked backwards through a tunnel of debris. The next thing I realized, I ended up in the clouds. Everything around me was bright, and I was able to see everything around me. As I looked up, there were 3 element-type creatures, but this time they were made from the clouds. Looked more human. They spoke to me and told me it wasn't my time. I must go home now. And then I woke up. A ghost which didn't like me. A few years ago, I lived in a very old house, and mind you, I didn't know any history behind it. But eventually I learned that it used to have a graveyard next to it. But the graveyard was taken down years ago, decades even, and ever since there's a market. And of course, I don't believe in ghosts, and I was pretty excited to have a new place to live in. That was until my brother and I started to see things. We lived on the 2nd floor. Important to note for the next paragraph, and, well, it was nighttime. I, a 15-year-old female, and my brother, maybe 8 or 9-year-old male, were yapping about games or some sort in the kitchen. We wanted to have snacks because we couldn't fall asleep. My back was facing the window and my brother's in front of me, so we could see the window very well. During the conversation, my brother went pale and stared at the window. His face showed true horror. He started to cry out loud. I quickly turned around just to see what was going on. He kept saying that she was behind the window. I didn't see anybody, but I was horrified enough and believed him because he for sure couldn't have faked a cry like that. Next day, my brother had a friend over. They were hanging out in my mom's room. My mom with her friend were sitting in the kitchen. My brother, and his friend were watching TV till they fell asleep. I was half asleep, so every noise sounded pretty sharp to me. Even the TV seemed pretty loud, that's how sharp everything felt. But I heard a very weird noise, like groans. Opened my eyes just to see a full silhouette of a little girl standing right in front of my brother, basically hovering over him. I panicked, the little girl noticed me, and in an abnormal speed went and flew through the door, which is fully closed. I tried to scream for my mom just to realize that I couldn't even scream. I somehow lost my voice within a few minutes. Nothing stopped me from running toward my mom and crying about what I'd seen. After some time, a week before moving out, I was peacefully sleeping in my bed. But then I felt a very heavy presence on my neck. It felt like somebody was choking me and sitting in my chest. I wasn't paralyzed or frozen. I could move enough to try to remove something from me. Which I couldn't because, well, it's a ghost. I struggled enough till I finally was able to breathe. And all of a sudden I heard a groan and loud thumps going toward the kitchen. Grabbed my phone because I wanted to call my mom, since she was working during the night and it was only me and my brother in the house. That was until I realized that it was burning hot. It was basically about to explode. My phone had a warning that it needed to immediately cool down, and it has never happened before. Couldn't fall asleep and stayed up all night, waiting for my mom from work. I don't live in that house anymore, but whoever was there, she didn't like us at all. I have a ghost in my room, and I'm pretty sure that my dog can see it. So I moved into a new house like a half a year ago. I did that with my dad and my younger brother. I got the room that was upstairs, and it's the only room that's upstairs because the stairs lead to my room. Like 3 months pass, my dad says to me, "I believe that a ghost is in your room." So obviously I'm like, "Boy, what?" So after he told me that, my room had a different type of energy. Nothing would go on in my room for like the first year. The only thing weird about it is that there's this one corner that feels like something's there, like all the energy is there. So a year passes. My dog starts to look in the corner, like a lot, and sometimes he'd be under the blankets and randomly jerk up and run out of the blankets just to sit down and look at that corner with his ears perked up. Later, only at night, I would hear these knocking noises in my walls, which scared me. I started to believe more and more that this ghost is real. Until today, January 26, 2024, it convinced me 100% that this ghost is real. It's like 7:30 p.m., went into my closet to get a shirt, and there was a full breeze in there. And mind you, there isn't any fan, there's no vents, so my mind was like, what is happening? I go out of my closet, shut my door, and lay down on my bed. I'm on the phone while watching a show, and then I hear my closet door knob, and it started to move. Look over, and it's literally turning. I was doing that for a hot 5 seconds, and then it stopped. After that, I freaked out and just remembered, oh yeah, there's a ghost in my room. But after that, I'm convinced that it's real and my dog can see it. I would also like to add that one night when I was falling asleep, something pulled my ear like it was trying to get me out of my bed. I know I didn't imagine it because it felt way too real. He said that when he walks up the stairs, there's like an energy shift. He's also witnessed the door letterbox flip up and down out of the blue. When he comes up to my room, he feels like a pat on his arm. When he first moved in, it was just my brother and my dad who came to the house. My brother started to look around at my room and saw a door handle on the wall and wanted to show my dad. When I went back into the room, the door handle was gone. My orphanage is 120 years old. My experiences. One day I go to sleep at around 12. I wake up at 3 in the night and I begin hearing loud demonic whispering of children playing right next to my ear. Eventually I get annoyed, and grunting isn't doing it. At some point I chalk it up to kids playing outside or shitting around in the yard outside. But it doesn't get quieter. It's in my ear at this point. So I look outside and I realize that it's pitch black outside. There's no kids and nobody who's there. Another time my roommate went to sleep earlier than usual. I ended up staying late up at night, maybe around 2. I hear footsteps going into the secondary bathroom to the hallway. It's not anybody in the orphanage nor a caseworker because we all have bathrooms in our room armed with a shower. So it's like cruising around my bedroom back and forth. It stops when I start praying to Jesus. I should also mention that this is a heavily Catholic-centered orphanage. We have regular priests who come in the summer to teach us about God. I'm usually not religious, but I thought using the name of a higher power would help. Anyway, I mentioned the name of Jesus several times, and each time they stop momentarily before cruising between my bedroom and going to the secondary bathroom. Somehow it turns on the sink, and I can hear it doing that for more than a minute. I go outside and I see that the hall is pitch black. Nope. Immediately went back to my room and slept throughout the night. My father committed suicide 2 months ago. Seeing crows and toddler talking about his grandpa. My father had end-stage congestive heart failure and committed suicide May 29th. He was in the process of having a heart attack. It was a violent death, gunshot wound to the chest. Whew. But he did it for a lot of reasons. The main one being he wanted to control when he died, and he didn't want to die in the hospital, but rather in the comfort of his home. He also didn't want to be a burden to us financially or in any way a process of him dying, meaning us having to change him or clean him. When I went to pick up his ashes from the funeral home, there was a very large crow sitting in the parking lot that caught my attention. I thought it was strange considering crows are considered death animals, but there's a comforting aspect to it. I've always really liked crows, but anyways. I was walking out of the funeral home with my dad's ashes in my hand. My 2-year-old son started saying, "Grandpa, there's Grandpa." Mind you, we never called my dad Grandpa because my son never spent much time with him. It wasn't until he passed that my son started talking about his grandpa. I also think my son's too young to understand that my father's ashes were in that box. I fully believe my son sees his grandpa. I will say that I am Christian, so that's where my belief set lies. I pray often for signs that my dad's in heaven or that his presence is still with me. I don't believe people who commit suicide are damned to hell. He had questionable morals prior to his passing, but after his end-stage heart failure diagnosis, he started praying often. So I think he made his peace with God. Once when I was crying and upset, it was raining outside and a full rainbow showed up. My toddler then said, "Where's Grandpa?" Another interesting thing is I've been seeing crows and ravens. Not really sure which they are, but frequently, like on a daily basis. Numerous times a day I saw the one at the funeral home. They literally fly above my car when driving around. It's the strangest thing. Hope it's not a bad omen for me. Like I said, there is a feeling of comfort to it. Just figured I'd share this, it's interesting to say the least. I've included some pictures of a crow sitting outside my house, the rainbow I saw with my son, and a picture of me and my dad. If anybody has any opinions of this, I'd appreciate hearing them. Hope the crows aren't a bad sign. My 2 stories, hauntings. So I don't believe in ghosts. However, I do have 2 stories from my life that triggered my interest. Let me tell you them. And let me say, as a skeptic, I still get slight chills thinking about them. And yes, the second one scared me way more. 1. When I was a teenager, I competed all over the place. One time, we got put in an old nun's rectory. They locked us in our rooms at night and kept boys and girls in separate floors. We were like 17 to 18. The place kind of just creeped me out. I'm not religious at all, and all the imagery made me uncomfortable. There was this big Jesus cross at the end of the hallway in front of a red-tinted window. That shadow was just the worst. so I could barely sleep knowing I was locked in a room. Not great when you gotta compete, which made it worse. The next morning, I way overslept. When I got up, I immediately went looking for my team to get ready. I heard loud voices coming from my buddy's room. We were up on the 4th floor. I walked in, voice stopped. No one there. I noticed that there was a small air grate, so I assumed it was coming from downstairs, but I went down each floor looking for people and no one was there. Turns out the nuns were gone for the day and everybody else was like 2 buildings over getting a speech from the coach. I was the only one in the building. This one is the one that genuinely scared me. I worked in a rink as a teenager, and man, I got there early, like 5:30 early. So I walk in one day and turn on the lights in the main rink area. Up above, overlooking the ice, is like a mezzanine. It's all glass, and on the other side of that wall or mezzanine is a basketball court. The canteen's below the mezzanine. The girls in the canteen always say they heard footsteps up in the mezzanine, and me and some other guys had to go in a few times to ensure them that there's nobody up there creeping. The door to this mezzanine auto-locks. We need a key to open it from the outside. We always left the basketball court lights on so we could see anybody on the cameras who broke in. The whole building had security sensors on the doors that were sensitive, and wind would sometimes cause them to go off the doors shaking. So, after I switch on the lights in the main rink area, I look around and notice movement in the mezzanine across the rink. I look up and somebody's going back and forth. Now, since there are 3 ways into the rink, I assume it's my boss setting up chairs for an event that day. I wave, the person turns and waves to me. They're backlit by lights from the basketball area, so I can't make them out. And of note here, the security has to be turned off separately in a few places at the rink I worked at, so turned off the security at the end I was in, and it distinctly beeped when I turned it off. I walked down to the other end, walked up into the mezzanine. No one's there. The alarm proceeded to go off because I set it off in the main hall entry area with my presence. I immediately called my boss to call him an idiot for not shutting off all the alarms. The cops come automatically because of the alarm. Went back down to find him, proceeded to set off the 3rd and final alarm at the last set of doors. My boss picked up, told me that he was in town 40 minutes away to pick up a load of wood when the store opened. I immediately started scouring the building. When the cops came, they helped, but no one was there. Checked every camera, which clearly caught me running around hunting for this person, and also the cameras aimed at every door. No one came in or out. No one was on the camera in the mezzanine. I've never been able to explain this. The person was distinct. They distinctly waved back. I could see them the whole time walking down toward the mezzanine. I only lost sight of them when I entered the main foyer and walked up the stairs to the mezzanine itself. All of the exits had cameras. All of the cameras captured me hunting for the person. The cops thought I was nuts and watching me look for the person on the video as I got more and more frustrated. I was alone in that whole facility. I, over 15 years later, still hate that mezzanine. 2 people I know have died in that rink, on the ice and before that. To this day, new staff mention hearing footsteps. I've scoured that mezzanine for hiding places more than once. Directly after footsteps were heard and never found anything, so. Now I don't believe in ghosts, and I do believe both instances are explainable as 1, voices do somehow travel over the distance through air vents. 2, my brain backfiring like wild with the odd lighting. I just wanted to share the main reasons I'd taken interest in this stuff. Try to keep an open mind. My pawpaw visited me. In July of 2019, my pawpaw passed away. It was like the roof and walls of a house in our family, and when he passed, it was very devastating for all of us. In the previous months beginning in December of 2018, he got sick. We all thought it was the flu because it was the same symptoms. And of course, he was stubborn and didn't want to go to the doctor. He got over it, and then in January 2019, he got sick again. Same symptoms. And, well, no doctor. I visited him pretty daily normally, but he'd been working a lot the next 2 weeks and hadn't been able to go see them in person. So I went over there, and my pawpaw with jaundice. Means the skin turns a yellowish color because they're not exercising bile from their kidney properly. I talked to them like normally, and they pulled my grandma aside and said he's yellow. He needs to go to the doctor immediately. My grandma said that, I know I've said something to her and that he just won't go. Again, stubborn, no doctor. So I had to think of a way that I could make him go. My aunt, his youngest daughter, is like his favorite, I would say. So I called her the next morning and asked if Grandma talked to her, and she said that she talked to her this morning. So I told her what was going on and that I think she could convince him to go, maybe. She lives in Iowa, so she was coming down to visit a couple of weeks later. She said that she would try to talk to him. She convinced him to go the week after because, he didn't want to spend the week they were down in the hospital when he went to tears. We found out he had E. coli, a rare gallbladder cancer, hepatitis B, and cancer that's in his last stage. He had 6 months to live. I got the call that he was coming home, and I said that's great, but he said he's going to go home on hospice. My heart dropped. You know that song by Luke Combs, Because I'm Leaving? The last verse where he takes his dad's hand and talks to him, that's what my pawpaw did with me. Fast forward 6 months, I get a phone call and he passed away. A couple of years passed and I was laying in bed thinking about him and crying. And, he's buried in the cemetery that I have to pass on my way home. I eventually fall asleep and I'm in a movie theater and a black and white movie's playing, and I look around and I see my pawpaw and his sister sitting in the back. He looked healthy. He said to me that he was fine and he was happy. I hugged him and said, I miss you, and he looked at me and said he missed me too. I woke up the next morning and just cried. Cried knowing that he was okay and knowing that he was in heaven. So this was years and years ago. I'm making myself sound old, but this happened when I was living with my mom. So, the same house I grew up in and always believed in this stuff, by the way, so not my first. But this encounter, I was standing in the kitchen. When you walk in from the front, you walk into the living room with no walls in between the kitchen and in front of the fridge board. I was just looking around. That's when I'd seen someone pass right next to me and go down the hallway. I looked down the hall, no one was there, everyone was in the living room. Turned around and looked at my mom, and she just stared at me like, what the fuck? So I asked her, did she just see that? She says yes, and looked like my biological dad when they were young. My next encounter was when I was sleeping. I woke up and it was like 3-something a.m. I had to go to the bathroom, so I just got up to use the bathroom, but I noticed the light on in the kitchen. Before I can look to see the direction of the light, I look at the garage door, which is diagonally across from the hallway in the kitchen. I see an Indian chief standing there dressed in things they wear to, show that they're chief. You know, the feathers on top of the head and the staff. I literally just woke up, so I'm, dazed. I look at where the light's coming from, and it's the stove light. There were pots and pans that I didn't do the night before. So I was like, I've got to be dreaming, and went to the bathroom. Closed the door and did my thing, and then I just opened the door and the light's off and he was gone. Mind you, if anybody steps in the hallway and walks by the bathroom, the floor creaks. It never creaked. I told my mom about it the next day, and she said it could be possible because we live where the Trail of Tears used to be. So my mom's husband took me out of the woods behind the house and showed me an Indian burial ground. I was flabbergasted. Need help with my room. Hey guys, I'm 18 and living with my parents waiting to leave for college in August. My room is haunted. Started around 3 months ago. I'd periodically wake up in the middle of the night anywhere from 2 to 3 a.m. I would hear breathing from the corner of my room. At first, I would naturally think it's the window, the fan, or my mini fridge, but the noise would only happen during these hours and never during the day. I also know this is never a figment of my imagination due to me being sleepy, because one time around a month ago, I was up playing Minecraft till around 2 and I heard the breathing in my right ear again. This scared the crap out of me. Ran to my mom's room to prove it to her, and she came in to check it out, and it disappeared. But out of reason, wake up at 2 or 3 a.m. every night, and I can't sleep in that room. It's because I've woken up to a voice speaking into my ear. It once said the name Terry. My family has not known anybody named Terry, and my grandparents owned the house before us. Nobody was named that. And it also woke me up from a dead sleep saying, "Yep." Nothing happens to any of my family members, just me, which is why I've been kind of scared. Things only happen in my room. The final straw for me, which scared the shit out of me yesterday, was me and my grandpa prayed over my room together. While praying, our phone rang extremely loud out of nowhere with an unknown caller. We didn't even pick up. The energy in the room shifted. She said that she felt that there was something in that moment. The fact that it didn't like when we prayed is pretty scary to me. I don't know what to do. My parents just don't believe me at this point. I've kind of made it into a joke with my friends, but it's really destroying my sleep schedule and I'm stressed to high hell. Please help me. How do I handle this? It screamed so loud and my sister's voice begging for me to come to the second floor. Something screamed so loud and my sister's voice begging for me to come to the second floor and save her. I was going to hurt her. It was exactly this. "Brother, please save me, brother, please come save me." The voice came from the second floor and it happened about 4 p.m. at noon. Thought it might be crazy, but my father, who's in 2 rooms away, also heard it. Wanted to go up right there, but around 3 p.m. I saw my sister go out with my mother and I wasn't sure that she wasn't home or if she were. I would have seen her. My father and I went up there to the second floor room to find nothing. Didn't see anything. I don't know what would have happened if I'd gone up there alone myself. This happened 18 years ago in 2006. But to this day I still get goosebumps. One more incident happened with me a year later. It was much more like a poltergeist. A very violent one. We'll talk about that in a separate post. What do you think? What was it? Still can't figure it out. Also, my house has a history of haunted incidents since 1995. These are the only ones I witnessed. My house is haunted. Please help. So we just moved into a new place. It's brand new, 2024. It's a trailer in a trailer park. We've lived there for a little over a month now, and just recently I've been experiencing some unexplained events. One night, me and my dog were laying on the couch, kind of falling asleep, when all of a sudden we hear a loud crinkling noise coming from the bedroom hallway where the kids sleep. Except my kids were staying the night at my mom's. My dog heard it and jumped up. It was creepy, but I shrugged it off. A few days later, my kid was in bed and it was like 1 a.m. I heard a voice. Checked out my kids and they were dead asleep. Just didn't sound like their voice. Again, shrugged it off because maybe sleep talking, but, the other night we all just had a living room sleepover. We're all sleeping in the living room, and while everybody else is sleeping, I heard a loud voice say, "Hello?" from the kids' bedroom hallway again, followed by tapping sounds. Now, the next day I went to check out the kids' bedrooms. Stepped on a toy in my kids' room and it was the same voice. However, you need to push a button to make this go off. This is when I'm officially scared, convinced this isn't explainable. My fiancé then left out of town a couple of days with the kids to visit his dad. Last night was the worst night of all of them. Bathroom fan next to my son's room turned on. I went and turned it off, started walking away, and I heard my son's fan in his bedroom turn on, and I ran to my room. Got in my bed, and I was banging on the bottom of the bed. It was so hard the bed was shaking. My heart started pounding. I called my mom crying and begging for her to come over. She came over, and I just left straight with her that night. I'm one to look at every logical explanation before thinking of paranormal activity, but there's no explanation for this. There was banging and pounding on the bed really loud. I don't know what to do. My fiancé goes out of town for work for 3 months, and I'm scared to be alone. Ambergate Pumping Station, Derbyshire, England. In the summer of 2008, I was employed as a contractor and control systems engineer by Severn Trent Water. I was working in Ambergate Pumping Station, just next to Carsington Water in Derbyshire, just near the village of Matlock. It was late in the afternoon, around 4 p.m. I was asked to go to the pumping station. I was rather busy that day. Initially asked why one of the operators couldn't be sent instead. Someone jokingly said with a laugh, "Well, it's haunted, and Sausage, a nickname of one of the operators, Sausage won't go back in there." Whilst I believe in ghosts and had my fair share of weird, but not particularly disturbing paranormal experiences, I just thought somebody was having a laugh and wasn't really being serious. Ambergate Pumping Station is one of those old Grand Victorian pump houses. It's quite deceiving as it extends around 3 stories below ground. Here's experience number 1. I descended the 3 flights of metal stairs to the bottom of the pump house. I carried my small bag of tools down along with the folding metal table. Despite being a warm summer's day outside, it was cold, damp, and dark in there, being quite dimly lit and with no natural light. The job wasn't a big one. Test a panel, trace out the fault, pretty normal stuff. I'd been in there for maybe 10 minutes when my bag of tools flew off the table behind me, 6 feet across the room, hitting the wall with a thud and a clang. It spilled all of its contents, mainly spanners, screwdrivers, and other random stuff. I didn't see it happen, but as soon as I heard it hit the wall, I spun round. I was quickly bewildered as I was completely alone in there. My tool bag wasn't balanced on the edge of the table where it might have fallen off. It would have to be lifted and then thrown. Plus, it weighed around 10 kilograms. I gathered all my tools, put them back to my tool bag, set it back down on the table. Unfortunately, my job was almost finished. My tool bag wasn't moved a second time. 5 minutes later, I picked up the tool bag, folded up the table, and made my way out. Drove back to the Severn Trent offices near the village of Clay Cross. When I got back, one of the guys said, "Have fun in there, Neil." I said, "Mm-hmm." Didn't say anything more of it. Experience number 2. 2 weeks after this, I had to go back out to Ambergate. And this time, this experience, although nothing was thrown, was far weirder. I entered the pumping station at around midday. I had the usual bag of tools and folded metal table with me. I switched the lights on and descended the stairs down to the bottom. As I stepped off the final metal step at the bottom, the light switched off. I set my tools down on the floor along with my metal table and slowly just groped my way up the 3 flights of stairs in the pitch dark. I unfortunately didn't have a flashlight, and this was well before the times of smartphones with lights. So given my previous experiences, I felt a bit unnerved by this climbing the stairs, but there's nothing else I could do. Finally, I made it back up the stairs, and after some fumbling around, found the light switch. I switched it, and hallelujah, the lights came back on. I gingerly walked back down the steps, and lo and behold, I reached the bottom step, and click, the lights went off again. God damn it, I thought. This time I felt even more nervous climbing the stairs in the pitch black, but I had a plan B. I went out to my car, and in the boot I had some duct tape. I cut a large piece of this duct tape and taped it firmly across the light switch. For a third time I walked down the stairs, and when I go to the bottom of the stairs, and the lights started to flicker like a lot. It was as if somebody was at the top of the stairs playing with the light switch, but now couldn't turn it off. I could also faintly hear the click-click of the light switch being pushed over and over again. Stayed in there 10 or 15 minutes until my job was done, but all throughout this time the lights were flickering as if somebody or something was messing with the light switch, but couldn't turn it off. Hell no, I didn't like it in there. Completed my job and got the hell out of there. I've told a handful of people with regards to the first experience that somebody said, "Oh, you must have put it on the edge of the table and it fell off." But that doesn't explain how it ended up 6 feet away. They tried to explain the second incident with the lights as like a colleague playing a prank on you, but I'm 100% certain it wasn't. I didn't see anybody else in there. I heard no footsteps, no voices, no one entering or leaving through the heavy metal doors of the pump house. Plus, this location is fairly remote. It's like a colleague, they would have had to follow me there and then drive back. That's pretty unlikely to go to that extreme play a prank. Fortunately, I've never had to go back. I don't want to. Hearing a ghost, Worcestershire, UK. So this ghost story takes me back a long time. I grew up in the village of Pershore, Worcestershire, England. It's a moderately ruralish farming community in the Cotswolds. During the summer of 1978 was when I was 18. I was working as a laborer for a local farmer called Mr. Plant. His nephew was Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin. I would often finish late at night around 11 p.m. and then walk back across the fields to my parents' house. It was a warm night and I decided to rest and sit on a gate. I'd been sat there a couple of minutes and I heard what sounded like a horse galloping fast along country lane. As the noise got closer, I could hear a whip. The creaking of a saddle and a horse neighing and panting loudly got closer and closer. Somebody was driving that horse at full speed along that lane. I looked down the lane in the darkness and I saw nothing, but the noise was getting closer and closer. The noise got very loud and then passed me, then faded. There was no horse and no rider. Safe to say that it was a bit bizarre. I hadn't been drinking and fully expected to see a horse and a rider, but only the noise passed by me, no apparition. Sure, it could have been a human horse and rider, but even in the darkness, I think I would have physically seen it. Whilst I am a believer in the paranormal, I'm always open to people's ideas on debunking things. Random teleporting across town, or ending up on a road that you couldn't have otherwise gotten to. Something really strange has been happening lately, and I know I'm not crazy, because friends of mine have experienced this with me on 2 separate occasions. I swear I'm teleporting across town somehow. This has happened to me 3 times, and it's seriously starting to freak me out. Happened for the 3rd time less than an hour before I started writing these words. I was riding in my friend's car back to a place from a movie theater on the opposite side of town. A trip that would have normally taken around 15 minutes. Took us around 5. I noticed what had happened almost immediately, but I didn't want to say anything until my friend, and we'll call him E. He did out of fear of sounding crazy. On the drive, we randomly ended up downtown, close to my place much sooner than we should have. The transition is so seamless that I can't tell the difference until I see man-made landmarks like buildings and stuff. He mentioned that he didn't make any turns that he'd normally have to make to get there. We just ended up there. We weren't distracted by a conversation or anything, and the both of us were stone cold sober. Then he started to freak out a little bit and told him about the 2 other experiences like I'd had, and more on those later, by the way. We made it to my place and decomposed a bit, but in the car I told E about the other 2 events like I'd experienced. The very first time I had something like that happen, I was walking to a gas station to grab a snack after work. Somehow ended up walking on a street a mile down the road. No time had passed at all, and I know this because I check my watch fairly often. The second experience was the more drastic of the 3 I've had. I was in the car with another friend of mine. We'll call him Jay. We were on our way to a Walmart, a 30-minute drive away from his place one morning, and we ended up getting there in 10 minutes. He did notice what had happened shortly after starting the drive, though. We took over in this more scenic road in my state, Virginia, which would be a straight path to North Carolina. Instead of us going toward North Carolina, we ended up on a very similar road much closer to Walmart within a matter of seconds. The transition was nearly unnoticeable until I saw the building I recognized from the part of town the Walmart's in. That experience freaked me out too. I have no clue, I don't know what's going on. To be honest, I'm really scared. I don't know what's happening and I want to find out. Has anybody else experienced this? And another thing that happens is, this has been consistent all through times, is that I, along with E and J, get their horrible burning sensation in your lower chest. I feel this awful sense of uneasiness, and standing up after an experience like this feels like a burden. Walking around is awkward and clumsy. All 3 times I've had this happen, I, along with E and J, have had this completely sober. My grandpa visited me before passing. 2 days ago, I found out my grandfather's passed away. I live in Australia and my grandpa lives overseas, me visiting every couple of years. We stay in touch over the phone frequently, and I lived with him for 6 years before moving here. He was the most loving grandparent ever, always supportive and always kind. He survived stage 4 cancer 30 years ago, even after the doctor saying that he wouldn't make it. That day, while I was getting ready for bed around 12 a.m., I had a sudden feeling something was very wrong, and I should call him. I ignored it, and I thought it was late and I'd call in the morning. I'm awake in bed trying to sleep, eyes open, and I suddenly see strange patterns and a white, blue, purple light. I get the feeling that he's with me. I feel his presence. Can't explain it. It feels warm. My night light starts flickering. It felt like a final visit, a goodbye or a blessing. Can't explain how, but I knew it was him. Thought I was tripping when I fell asleep. At 3 a.m., my dad woke me up to tell me that he's got a call. My grandpa's passed away. It's not fair. I can't stop crying. Been awake since then, and I can't eat, I can't sleep, and I can't get rid of the hole in my chest. I'm supposed to see him in December. He's supposed to come to my wedding and be a great grandfather to my children. We were so close. All I can think of is how he came to visit me, and I should have called him. He had a heart attack, and by the time the ambulance got there, it was too late. The time he passed was around when I felt his presence. I can't even go overseas in time for his cremation because I don't have a visa to visit my country of birth. Lost my citizenship when I became an Australian citizen. So many times, so many should-haves. Can't stop crying, and I know how I'll get over this, but I just had to write this and get it off my chest. I'll never stop feeling guilty for not calling when I had the feeling. Life sucks. He deserves so much more than what life gave him. I would give anything to see him one more time and say I love you. Can't even remember the last time I said anything to him. I watched him being cremated on video call yesterday, my mom crying over him, saying that I wasn't here. Please come back to me. I don't know how to move on from this. I hope he's at peace where he is now. Locked bathroom door keeps opening when I shower. plus some odd stuff from the past. Well, it all started back in college. I was laying in bed one night and I had one roommate, but he was gone in his girlfriend's dorm that night. I was laying there in my bed and I started seeing a shadow of some sort move across the ceiling. I then started hearing footsteps across the carpeted floor. This was a very small dorm, by the way, no bathroom, and to continue, I saw the shadow on the ceiling. I hear the walking, covered my head with the blankets in fear and shock, and decided to lay completely still. Like that would do anything. And then maybe less than a minute later, I hear and barely feel my top down blanket moving, like a hand was moving on it near my legs. I could also hear it as well like a hand. It scared me. But for reference, I was staying in a dorm at UNC, the University of Northern Colorado, which is said to be the most haunted college in the US. Then some other time I was staying in my girlfriend's dorm room. It was a larger dorm than mine, and she had just one roommate. Her roommate and that roommate's boyfriend stayed the night in her bed while I stayed the night in my girlfriend's bed. So on that night I remember all of us asleep. The roommate woke us up, I guess, at some point in the night to something or someone saying her name right by their bed. It was a woman's voice. She told us that, well, all morning, I guess, that she was the only one that was hearing it. Guess she freaked out and jumped out of her bed. Boyfriend didn't hear any of it as well, and neither did me or my girlfriend. Activity of the paranormal calmed down after college. Nowadays, when I shower, I'll get off the toilet before showering or out of showering, and the door's just open just a hair, like an inch. Lock the door every single time. I've even checked after noticing to see if in fact I locked it, and it is locked but opened. Talked to my friends, and they and myself think that there's a spirit following me. When I was a young kid, I remember getting off the school bus and hearing somebody calling my name. Yet my neighbors were gone on vacation. My dad was gone at work. No one else in the area knew my name, so that's why I think something's been following me for more than a while. Perhaps a good spirit. Is this okay here? My father visited me in my sleep. I was 12 years old in 2002. That was when my father was killed in a car accident. It was his fault. He was out playing around in his go-kart, doing more than 100 miles an hour on alcohol fuel in a go-kart late at night on a highway with his buddy. I'll spare you the rest of the details on that night. I'm 34 years old now, and when I was 17, I had a visit from him in my sleep one night that changed me and changed my life. This visit was a gift that I still think about. Well, that's why I'm writing it today, to get it off my chest and to tell someone. This was not a dream. My body was in bed and asleep, but that's the only thing that this event has in common with a dream. It was as if I woke up in another place. There I am standing in complete whiteness. There's nothing but white all around me. No shadows, no lines, no angles to anything, just white space. Can't see a floor beneath my feet, but I understand that there's something solid beneath them. I'm not falling. I can't see a wall in front of me, but somehow I'm aware that I'm standing next to a giant wall with a door. I don't know who I'm waiting for, but I do know that I'm waiting for someone to open the door. I'm not at all concerned with the things that I don't know, and I'm completely and utterly content. Vividly remember now how I felt as though I was lacking nothing. I didn't need anything. I wasn't without. As I stood there waiting, the door that I can't see but know is there opens, and my father's on the other side and I can see him. I run as fast as I could to him and I crash into him, embracing him. The very instant that I came into contact with him, I was filled with the most love that I've ever felt in my entire life, even to this day. The most profound and powerful feeling of being completely loved beyond anything I could imagine just poured into me. Simultaneously, it was like an instant exchange of information. Everything that was inside of me that I wanted to tell him was given to him, and everything he wanted me to know, he told me without words. I instantly knew from him. like telepathically without any delay. He told me how sorry he was for dying, and I felt how guilty he felt for that. He let me know that he was watching over me. He was doing this always, and he wanted me to know that he knows about how alone I felt without him, and he wishes that he could comfort me, let me know that he's there. I felt his love completely, and his sorrow for being gone. He said he would never have left the house that night if he had any idea, or that he thought he would have gotten killed or taken from us. I squeezed him so tightly, or released my grip without letting him go. I looked up at him, and he looked over to the left. Followed his gaze, and I seen a big white crest-shaped couch there in the middle of the whiteness that surrounded us. We held hands, walked over to sit on the couch. Thought to myself, but what will we talk about? He knows everything inside of me. We sat down, and I looked at his face. He looked so healthy. He smiled at me so lovingly and so proudly. Then, as if he was saying, "Look what I can do," his eyes turned into two birds flying, and his face and head turned into an ocean above his shoulders. What amazed me was that I could still recognize him. I held his hand still. Then I woke up in my bed, and it was at that moment I realized what I didn't even know, that I needed to forgive my father for dying. I wasn't even sure that I was holding on to that hurt and anger toward him before that. It changed my life forever. I love you, Dad, and I hope we'll be together again. There may be a demonic entity in my home. My family believes that a few of us have gifts. My mother had a sense of smell, and my aunt has the power to protect and heal. I had the joy of seeing. I had gotten overwhelmed and scared, honestly. I'd asked for it to be taken away. Like my mom said, once I turned 18, I'd slowly get it back, and unless I made the choice again on my own. Years later, which is now, I have two younger siblings, one almost 12 and the other 8. I still live with my parents trying to get everything together. My boyfriend had also moved in since we're trying to also start a business, and work better when we're all together. My parents and siblings went to go camping one weekend, and my boyfriend and I were in the living room talking and watching a show. When we turned the TV off, getting ready to go to bed, we both saw a little figure by the front door. A few seconds later, we heard, noises. The dog sat in front of us and didn't move. My boyfriend, which I'll call Jay, went to go investigate. Like a horror movie, Jay decides to peek his head around the corner and say, "We should check out your brother's room." I denied since I started feeling something. He was gone for a minute, and I felt something behind me. I felt this pressure, like as though I was heartbroken over something, and cried. I was confused. Jay comes back and says that something's in the room and tried telling him to go with him. Something pulled me to go stand in the hall. I felt glued to the floor, like someone wanted me to stand right there. Jay opened my brother's door, and I got a flash image of what he saw. There was something else in the hallway straight from the one I stood in. This was angry and getting ready to attack like a bull. Jay asked if I could see it, and I had to tell him that I wasn't allowed to move. A few weeks later, it's about to pass this weekend, him and Jay started getting into it more. Jay knows how bad they can be, but that's my family they're attaching to. I searched for apps and equipment online, but I haven't. Well, I guess you could say I have something coming in this Friday to experiment with, but I found an app that's pretty dead on. It's called Ghost. It's an app, and it has many things to do, and that's only $11 that you have to spend. The reason why I trust it's because it mentioned things I haven't even really mentioned to anybody but my mom. I was abused when I was 15 years old and got pregnant by the guy. I had miscarried a few months in. We used the Estes method, and we would try and say things around the lines of being like a child or mom. The only people that tried the Estes method were myself, Mom, and Jay. My brother did try, but I'm not mentioning what he repeated. He's 12, and we all know they can be. I'm stating this because I believe we need help, but more answers at the same time. The entity stated that it wanted myself and everybody in the home. that it had already taken one of her dogs. I don't know if it's powerful, but I just want to protect my family. Not too much activity, thankfully, in my life. I don't have much to report for ghostly behavior in my 55 years, and I'm okay with it. Maybe some minor activity or encounters. My house is circa 1900, but doesn't seem to have much of anything happening, which is good. I can see a funeral home from my kitchen window, so I always am curious that nothing's wandered through. Well, maybe I have these Harry Potter candles hanging from my bedroom ceiling. They went up for Halloween and just never came down. The batteries are all dead now, soon to be replaced as Halloween approaches. But as they were getting to the end of their battery life, this happened. I woke one night to one of the candles turning on and off. I said aloud, "Hey, can't you see I'm sleeping here?" The candle stopped for the night. When I woke up at maybe 5 a.m., the candle soon lit up. I said, "If you're trying to communicate, turn it off." And it turned off. I asked for it to come on. It did. It seemed to do exactly as I asked. So I said, "I have to get in the shower and I don't have time for this." It stopped. After my shower, I was getting dressed and said, "I have a few minutes. If you're trying to communicate, turn on the candle." It came on. Gave it instructions. Turn on for yes, leave off for no. Went through a few questions like, "Did you used to live here?" and "Are you related to me?" All no responses. If I remember correct, I asked if I was just passing through and got a yes. He laid down some ground rules like, "Don't scare me, don't wake me up, don't jump out at me." Never heard from it again, despite some attempts. Battery eventually died, and I replaced it once and still nothing. That one died too. We'll see if anything happens to replace the batteries. Maybe September. Maybe later. See ya.